It should be at least 6 meetings, that each study should be at least 2 meetings, so that they're, right, because there's, so I've heard from colleagues that 6 meetings is meaning that we're not studying anything else for a prolonged period of time. So instead of 3 meetings each, it would be 2 meetings each. So 2 meetings on anti-Semitism, 2 meetings on Islamophobia, so that each study should be at least 2 meetings. And that the committee report its findings on both studies. So after the word findings, it would be on both studies to the House. Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Clerk. And pour M. Fortin, je donne mes excuses que j'ai parlé.
Mr. Fortin, I apologize for speaking in English. I could give you all of this. No. Okay. Yes, we understood this.
Do anyone on the committee need to have it reread, or did you follow that? I know we followed that because we've written them down. Est-ce que c'est...
Perhaps it would be a good idea to reread it. Would you like us to reread it? To be sure that we're all working on the same version. Thank you, of course, Mr. Fortin. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to read it in English, because that's the original language of the amendment. Comment could not be heard. The sub-amendment would be at the end of line 2.
If I start after a comment, the committee undertake a study on the issue of anti-Semitism, and we introduce the sub-amendment here, and a study on the issue of Islamophobia. And then we continue the text. Second amendment is on line 5. We say that the independent studies include, but not limited. So that's the second part of the sub-amendment. And the rest of the second paragraph reads as is. So the third sub-amendment, or the third part, I would say. Oui.
Cinquième ligne, là, ce que je comprends, that the independent...
What I understanding is the independent study, or we're just including independent before study, and then study becomes studies, plural. But you have it further in the same sentence. Include but not limited to the issue of anti-Semitism and independent study on Islamophobia. The second mention doesn't have an amendment? I no longer have it before me. Okay. Well, Mr. Housefather, when you talked about independent studies, you're talking about those 2 studies, that they should be independent rather than theory? I'm talking about that we're going to have 2 meetings on anti-Semitism, 2 meetings on Islamophobia totally separately, and then we will have a report on anti-Semitism and a report on Islamophobia, give it to the House to have a response. So in other words, on the 2 studies, not existing studies. in the academic studies. No, the two studies that we're mentioning here, that they are independent of each other. I've understood. And I think that everyone has understood it now. Mr. Maloney?
Add that maybe you should include the word consecutive, so that they go one after the other, and that, so you don't complete one and then interrupt it by something else. So they should go up one after the other.
Two
So-
and two.
So 4 consecutive meetings, yes.
Yes, that's the intent.
It's the intent, but it doesn't say that as
Okay,
amended.
so each study should be at least 2 meetings for a total of 4 consecutive meetings. And that the committee report its findings on both studies to the House, okay, etc. So for a total of 4 consecutive meetings.
Madam Chair, I will circulate it after.
Is that okay? I'm receiving nods from everybody that everybody seems to be in agreement. Ms. Gladue, you have your hand up.
And Mr. Garrison.
Yes, Chair. So
You're not?
I recognize that Islamophobia is certainly continuing to be an issue in the country. But I would like to just point out that there was a significant study on it after the M103 motion. The Senate also completed a study. The Canadian government did a summit with many recommendations. And at the same time, I don't want to exclude other religions. We know that there have been 80 Christian churches torched, pastors locked up without bail. The Hindu community has reached out to me to let me understand that they are receiving hate speech and death threats. And so while all religions appear to be under attack, I don't want to dilute Mr. Housefather's original motion that talks about the crisis we're facing right now with the rise of anti-Semitism, rising by as much as 700% in some places, violent crimes, people are unsafe. And so, I'll defer to the will of the committee, but I do think that has to be the priority.
Thank you, Ms. Gladue. I have Mr. Moore, and then I have Mr. Maloney, just so that you know. Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a number of studies that have been proposed by members around the table, one of which, and I think it's a very important one, is the study proposed by Mr. Housefather dealing with anti-Semitism. I'm prepared to support his study without any amendment. I think the original motion is one that was brought to us some time ago, and it's kind of in the queue with other studies that have been proposed. If other people want to have other studies on other issues, they're welcome to bring those forward for consideration from the committee. In light of Mr. Housefather's willingness to get consensus around the table, I am happy to also support his new amended version. I'll note, it gives us one less day to study anti-Semitism, but I think it's a goodwill effort for us to not monopolize all the remaining time left on studies that when there's others that are in the queue that are also important. So I do want to make it clear. I'm happy to support Mr. Housefather's original motion that we study anti-Semitism, but also willing to support this amended and sub-amended motion as currently written.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Maloney, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to pick up on something Mr. Mendicino earlier. I want to add my voice to thanks to Mr. Housefather for being a strong and vocal leader on the issue. But to that, I would also like to thank Mr. Mendicino for the same reason, because he's been right by Mr. Housefather's side along with all of us on this issue, and I want to thank you too. So, look, the original motion proposed by Mr. Housefather I fully support. I also agree with Mr. Garrison's amendment. I think both issues need to be addressed by this committee, and I think that the proposed amendment, and I want to thank Mr. Housefather's willingness to compromise on the number of meetings, but I think the proposed amendments is an elegant solution to address the concern raised by all, and the 4 consecutive meeting component eliminates any concern people have with respect to not being able to address both issues. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maloney. Just alert you all that it's 10:01. We want to conclude with this, but there's going to be 3 votes that I require now on this one. So just to let you know, and we have a bit of a steering committee as well scheduled. So, Mr. Fast, I believe you put your hand up? Yes, please go ahead.
Well, Madam Chair, as a non-permanent member of this committee, I did want to add my voice in support of Mr. Housefather's motion that he's brought forward and the concerns that he's raised, very legitimate concerns. And I want to commend him for his passionate speech, an appropriate speech in the House of Commons this week, where he articulated those fears and threats that are part of Jewish life in Canada today. This is not a Canada that I grew up with. It shouldn't be the Canada that we should have going forward. And I hope this study will allow us to identify additional alternatives for addressing this very pernicious problem within our society. I will also be speaking at an event in support of the Jewish community this Sunday in Vancouver. And I want to assure Mr. Housefather that I will be sharing his concerns at that event. I do support the elegant solution, as Mr. Maloney has suggested, that's been presented to this committee to conduct effectively 2 studies, one on Islamophobia and one on anti-Semitism. But I also wanted to articulate my strong support for his original motion that Mr. Housefather brought forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all committee members. Much appreciate the comments. I'm now going to ask that we vote on the sub-amendment of Mr. Housefather.
Can we just read it so that we understand perfectly what it says now?
Yes. Well, the sub-amendment was to say for a total of 4 consecutive meetings. No, that. You want? I can read the whole thing. How about I read the whole thing? How do you read a sub-amendment? That pursuant to Standing Order 102, Sub 2, and in view of the alarming escalation of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in Canada, the committee undertake a study on the issue of anti-Semitism and a study on the issue of Islamophobia and the additional measures that could be taken to address the valid fears that are being expressed by Canada's Jewish and Muslim communities. That the independent studies include, but not be limited to, the issue of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia on university campuses. Each of the study should be at least 2 meetings for a total of 4 consecutive meetings, and that the committee report its findings on both studies to the House, and the committee requests the government table a response to the report. And so now the motion is on the sub-amendment.
And Mr. Garrison suggested we pass it on division, if that's...
And that, yeah, so thank you very much. So that has been passed. Now I'm going to ask for a motion on the amendment of, as amended. Passed on division?
I think everybody's in favor.
That's what I mean, in favor? Oh, why are we passing the other one on division?
Because, yeah, right.
I see, okay, fair. So, okay, unanimous, we agree on the, thank you very much. Now on the main motion as amended.
Agreed.
Passed unanimously.
Thank
Okay,
you.